Okay, so once again, so we will be having our new lesson as we proceed to the new quarter, or as we proceed to the new quarter of us. No? So again, sa mga hindi pa po nakakapag-take ng examination, pwede na pong i-take or kindly take it within the week. And then for those who would like to have their second attempt, okay, so kindly do so. Okay, so today we will be tackling all about the next lesson of ours. But first of all, okay, so I would like you to first identify these two. Okay, which do you think is a paragraph that is more clearer? Okay, which paragraph is clearer between the two? Let's say, for example, the black one is letter A and the white one is letter B. Okay, what paragraph is more clearer for you? Kindly have a read of it or take a look at it for a while. Sa tingin ninyo, ano kaya ang mas malinaw? Or what paragraph is more clearer? Is it paragraph A or paragraph B? You can use the chat box in answering. Ang uneven says A, okay. And last says P. How about the others? Most of you says B. Okay, but the correct answer is here is the letter A. Okay, so more clearer paragraph is letter A. Shannon has to make dinner. He goes to the store and walks through every aisle. He decides to make spaghetti. So he visits aisles and reads many packages thoroughly before deciding which groceries to buy. Once he arrives home, he finds a recipe for spaghetti, but needs to go back to the store for ingredients he forgot. Okay, let's say, let's read the second one naman. Taylor also has to make dinner. He wants lots of carbohydrates because he's running a marathon soon, so he decides to make spaghetti. After checking some recipes, he makes a list of ingredients at the grocery store. Okay, so this is letter B, rather pala. Okay, so I thought the black one is the letter A. Okay, so you're correct. So the answer here is letter B. So the white one or the white paragraph is more clear than the black paragraph. Okay, so Taylor's process here, okay, rather than Shannon, was more efficient. Okay, because his purpose was clear. Okay, and his or her purpose rather is for a marathon, and he needs a lot of carbohydrates. Okay, so with that reason of her, okay, he decides or she decides, okay, he decides rather not to make a spaghetti. Okay, so meaning yung Taylor's process here was more efficient or was more clearer, not because his purpose was clear. Okay, mas clear kasi yung purpose ni Taylor. Okay, therefore, establishing why you are reading something will help you decide how to read it, which saves time and improves comprehension. So here are some strategies to help you improve your skills. Okay, so our topic for today has something to do with reading. Okay, so entitled Academic Reading Strategies. Okay, you're going to find out what are the different strategies when it comes to reading academically. Okay, so let's find out. So at the end of the lesson, learners are expected to. Okay, so ayan lang naman yung ating goal. Okay, first, before we go to it, okay, to the discussion, I would like you to first watch the video of what academic reading skills are.
Welcome to Study Lab. This presentation is about academic reading skills. Let's talk about academic reading. At university, almost every course of study involves a lot of reading. It can be challenging to manage the amount of reading you will be assigned each week. This means you will need to develop skills in reading quickly and reading efficiently. This presentation is going to give you some advice on how to do that. You will need to learn to read quickly to find relevant sections of text. Then you'll need to learn to read carefully when you have found the information you need. At university, you will need to read for lectures. That means you will be expected to prepare for your lectures by pre-reading several articles. You might have 2 or 3 articles assigned every week. You will also need to read for tutorials. Tutorials are often based on assigned readings. So these articles that you read before your lectures, you might also get some readings before your tutorials. You will not be able to participate in group discussions in your tutorials if you have not pre-read this material. You won't have anything to talk about. You will also need to read for your assignments. You cannot start to write your assignment until you have read and researched many different sources of information. The reading comes before you can do any writing. So let's talk about some reading techniques. Our first technique is called skimming. This means you look quickly through a text to find the main points of that text, and this is the way you can decide whether it will be a useful text to read in further detail or not. We're also going to talk about scanning. This means you look quickly through a text for specific information. For example, let's say you're doing an assignment on online learning in a university context. You need to know whether this text is going to be relevant for you, so you look out for these keywords: online learning and university. This is scanning. Finally, there's reading for detail. This means you look closely at the text to understand and evaluate the information in detail. Note-taking is also a very important thing to do when you are at this stage. At this stage, you have already skimmed and scanned the text to decide if it is relevant for you. To determine whether a text will be useful, without reading every single word, you can first look at several things. You can look at the cover, especially if it's a book. You can look at the title. The title should have a couple of the keywords you are looking for. You can look at the index. You can look at the preface if it's a book, the table of contents, the titles of the chapters if it's a book with chapters. You can look at the abstract if it's a journal article you're looking for. You can also look at the headings and subheadings within chapters or sections of a journal article. And finally, you can read the introduction and the conclusion. If you look at all of these things, you should be able to determine whether it is worth it to read the text in great detail and take notes. Use your skimming and scanning techniques to avoid reading too closely at this stage. You don't have to read in detail until you are sure the text is going to be useful for you. All right, we need to be selective. We're not going to be able to read every single thing. Reading takes a lot of time and it can be very challenging. If you are selective about it, this will help you. Find out which of your assigned readings are required and which are suggested. So, like I mentioned before you go to your lectures, you need to read maybe 2 or 3 different articles. Your unit outline should tell you which articles are required and suggested. Read the required ones first and the suggested ones if you have time. When you are researching for your assignments, you do not always have to read the entire text in detail, even if you've decided that it's relevant. You can look for specific information and keywords relating to your assignment question and just read the parts of the text that you really think you need. You might need to read only one section or a couple of paragraphs to find what you need for your assignment. Just read that one section or those couple of paragraphs in detail. Another tip is focus on what is manageable. Academic reading is tough and it requires concentration and focus for long periods of time. So here's what you can do to make it more manageable. You can break the reading up into smaller parts. For example, read one chapter at a time, read an individual article, or even read a specific number of pages. You can say, I'm going to read 10 pages today and 10 pages tomorrow. Identify the purpose of your reading. Do you need to skim? Do you need to scan? Or do you need to read in more detail? And think about the time that you have available. Obviously, reading in detail will take a lot more time than skimming or scanning. Plan to skim and scan when you don't have a lot of time available for you. You can also set yourself goals. For example, I will read 3 articles today. I will read for 2 hours. I will read 10 pages and then stop. Whatever works for you. Finally, reward yourself with a break when you reach your goal. Always record the reference. I have put this on a separate slide because it is extremely important. Record the reference, the full reference, for each source so that you know exactly where your notes have come from. If you are going to use direct quotes, remember that you have to make a note of the page number. It is going to be very difficult if you need to go back into a long text to try and find a page number. So please make sure you write this at the top of your notes so you don't forget where it's come from.
All right, so that is a bit of introduction of what academic reading strategies or what academic reading skills are supposed to be.
This is the end of your
Okay, so what are the different reading strategies? So let's get to it one by one. So strategies differs not from reader to reader. Okay, we do have different strategies. Okay, so innate, not to us. No, perhaps one reading strategy for mine or for me, no, is not suitable for you. Okay, because we do have different strategies. No. Okay, so the same reader may use different strategies, no, for different contexts because their purpose of reading changes. Okay, so you ask yourself, no, why am I reading and what am I reading? Now, when deciding not to which strategies you are going to try. Okay, so what are those different reading strategies? Okay, so before we go to that, let's first identify now what are the purposes of reading. Okay, so people read different kinds of text, diba? Such as scholarly articles, such as textbooks, such as reviews, so for different seasons. So some purposes for reading might be this following. Okay, it can be to scan for specific information, just like in the video that you had watched. Okay, so these are the purposes of reading, not to scan for specific information, to skim, not to get an overview of what the text is, to relate no new content to existing knowledge, to write something, which often depends no, on a prompt, get critic and argument, to learn something, and then for general comprehension. Okay, so those are the purposes of reading. Okay, so can you take note of that? Okay, now we will be having our reading strategies before, no, after, before, during, and after reading. Okay, so what are the different strategies that we are going to use or that will be helpful when it comes to reading a certain text, no, before, during, and after reading stages? Okay, first let's have the before reading. First is establish a purpose. Okay, so first establish your purpose for reading. Okay, so what is your purpose no, of reading? Why do you want to read? Okay, so first you must have your purpose or reason of what of why are you going to read? Okay, and what are you going to read? Second is speculate. Okay, speculate about the author's purpose for writing. Okay, syempre before reading, if you have decided for a certain text, okay, then you must speculate no, about the author naman. No, about the purpose naman ng author when it comes to his or her writing. Next is to review. Okay, review what you already know and want to learn about the topic. Okay, so not the review for the text, no? So review nyo lang, okay? So kung ano yung gusto nyo malaman or ano yung alam nyo na, okay, at saka ano pa yung gusto nyo pang malaman, okay, about a certain topic. Next is preview. Okay, so we must preview the text to get an overview of its structure, looking at the headings, you can figures, tables, glossary, etc. Okay, let's say for example, you're going to read a certain book. Okay, you may have a preview of it. Okay, so you can look for a synopsis of it. Okay, so if it suits to you or ito yung gusto mong basahin, okay, you can have a preview no, of the things or text no, that you are going to read. Okay, just by looking for the headings, so pwede rin looking for the figures. Let's say, for example, if if most of the people are reading it, okay, and any other matters, so that has something to do with it. Next is to predict. Okay, before reading, we must predict the content of the text. Okay, so what is the purpose of predicting the content? No, in order for us to pose a questions no, about it, in order for us to have a question in our mind. Okay, so para malaman natin during reading and after reading if masasagot no, yung question natin no, regarding those or regarding that certain text. Okay, if the authors have provided discussion questions, then kindly read them first no, and write them no, on a sheet of paper. Okay, you also can use that. Okay, kung merong guided questions, okay, yung tawag ito, yung writer, then you can first not have a note or take notes of those questions para as you go along rather, no, in reading the text. Okay, so one by one, no, you can now identify. Okay, so what is the answer for this certain question? Okay, but prediction of yours, no, in order for you to have a question on your mind, and then can the answer it, no, or tawag dito, answered it no, after reading or during reading, no, kung ano mang question mo. Next is to take note. Okay, so ganun nga, sabi ko na nga, take note any discussion questions that have been provided. Okay, or take note questions that you have on your mind. Okay, so para as you read no, a certain text, okay, malalaman mo no, kung anong sagot doon sa tanong na yun. So that is for before reading. Okay, so for before reading, you should establish purpose. Okay, so speculate, review, okay, preview, predict, and then have a note or take note. Okay, so during reading naman, we should annotate and mark. Okay, when we say annotate, no, dito na yung mga magsusulat tayo or susulatan na natin yung ating text. Okay, so we must annotate and mark sections of the text now for us to what? Now for us to easily recall the important or interesting ideas. Okay, so when we are annotating and marking, okay, a certain text, we can use ball pen, we can use highlighter. Okay, so pa pwede yun. So later on, malalaman nyo pa yun, no? So pagdating sa annotation. Okay, so when it comes to your book, okay, kung pwede naman at gusto mo naman siyang sulatan, okay, you can annotate. No, you can circle those vocabulary words no, which is uncommon to you or which is not familiar to you. Okay, you can have a highlights of it or the different parts of it na para mas madali mong matandaan yung parts na yun. Or if ever man na gumugulo sa isipan mo yun, di ba? Okay, you can look for it. So next is check. Check your predictions and find answer to post questions. So kanina dito, okay, nag-predict ka. Okay, you have predicted the content or you have predicted events on what you are going to read. Okay, and then you post a question or you have question in your mind. Now check mo ngayon. Okay, kung tama ba yung iyong na-predict or nasagot ba yung question? Okay, na nasa isip mo. Now that's a good thing or one strategist now for us to to comprehend what the reading material. Next is to use headings and transition words to identify relationships in the text. Okay, so when we say transition words, okay, yung may mga moreover, in addition to that, okay, so we must use the following. Okay, so yung mga transition words na yun, in order for you to relate or tawag dito connect. Okay, so those different parts no, of the text you are reading. Next is to create. Okay, so what are you going to create during reading? Create a vocabulary list no, of other unfamiliar words, no, which will be defined later after reading. Okay, so during reading, you must create a vocabulary words. Let's say, for example, there are uncommon words, okay, that you had read or that you have read, okay, in a certain text. Then kindly take note of them. Okay, create a vocabulary list and then define it later. Okay, so syempre para malaman mo no, kung ano ba yung mga ibig sabihin ng unfamiliar words na yun or if there are context clues no, on the on the text itself. Next is infer. Okay, try to infer unfamiliar words meanings by identifying the relationship to the main idea. So when we say infer, kung ganun nga, kung meron kayo nakuhang unfamiliar words, just like what I've said, okay, kung merong context clues, okay, malalaman nyo agad immediately. Okay, what is the meaning of that unfamiliar words to you? Okay, by just identifying the relationship of it, not to the main idea or for kindly look lang no, for a context clues. Okay, you will infer the meaning of it. Next is to connect. To connect the text not to what you already know about the topic. So you have tawag dito, you have tawag dito, you have your what do you call this schema. Yeah, the schema or background knowledge when it comes to before reading. Okay, meron ka ng mga alam no regarding that thing. Now you are going to connect it okay to what you already know no, on the topic. Okay, dun sa iyong nabasa naman mo yun or you can add it up not to the to the ideas no, that you have now okay so rather than the previous one. And lastly is take breaks. Okay, so take breaks, split the text into segments if necessary. Okay, so you must take breaks. So sabi nga, pwedeng magpahinga when it comes to reading. Okay, so meaning nakaka-exhaust kasi minsan especially when we are reading continuously, okay, without pausing. Okay, so you must have or you must take breaks. So when it comes to during reading, you can annotate and mark. You can check your predictions. You can use headings and transitional words. You can create vocabulary list, and then try to infer those unfamiliar words. Now connect the schema or the background knowledge of yours not to what you already had not during reading, and then take breaks. Okay, if necessary. Next for after reading naman, after you read of something. So what are the things that you should do? First is to summarize. Okay, so once the Zoom meeting has ended, kindly rejoin lang no, for a while. So after reading naman, first is to summarize. Of course, no, once tapos tayo magbasa, we are advised no, to summarize it. So summarize the text so in your own words. Okay, you can note what you have learned, you can note the impressions, you can note what reactions no, you had. Okay, so basta summarize the text no, in your own words, pwedeng in an outline, pwedeng through a concept map, pwedeng through a matrix. Okay, so pwede naman yon. Okay, as long as you summarize the text, no? Because it is part of evaluation. It is part of evaluating yourself, no? Kung gaano mo ba nabasa or natutunan or naintindihan, okay, yung binasa mo, no? If you can summarize the text the way you wanted it, okay, so meaning you have read it correctly or you have comprehended no, the text that you have read. Okay, so again, in summarizing, you can note what you have learned. Okay, what are the impressions that you have as well as reactions. Okay. Next, talk. Okay, sabi you can talk daw. You can talk to someone about the author's ideas, not to check your comprehension. Okay, so kasi minsan dito meron tayong let's say for example, ibang pagkakaintindi. Okay, so when it comes to the story, okay, so we can talk no, to someone who had read also no, same book or same text as yours. Okay, para malaman mo kung ano ba yung pagpapakahulugan niya. No, with this, with this passage, no, with these authors, no, intent. Okay, para malaman mo or try to realize no, kung what is more better. Okay, so yung iyo bang realizations or yung kanya. Okay, so syempre hindi naman lahat ng oras is tama no yung ating yung ating realization when it comes to a certain passage of the book, especially if medyo malalim. Okay, yung yung wordings as well as the meaning. Okay, of the text no, that we are the text that we are reading. Okay, so it's fair to us no to talk to someone no who also read no the same text or same book no that you have read. Okay, so kindly talk not to someone. Next is identify and reread. Okay, so you can identify and reread difficult parts of the text. So meaning, minsan kasi meron tayong mga materials or reading materials na hindi agad naiintindihan or we cannot comprehend okay, immediately in just one reading. Okay, so there are materials or reading materials of ours, no, wherein we cannot comprehend no immediately in one reading. Okay, so meaning kailangan natin silang i-read, especially those difficult parts of it. Okay, so that's why nakakatulong din yung mga ginagawa natin during reading. Kaya yung pag-annotate, pag-mark, okay, so para mabalikan mo yung mga gusto mong balikan, okay, no, sa tingin mo hindi mo masyadong naintindihan no during reading. Okay, so after reading, you must identify and reread no, those difficult parts of the text. Next is to define. Okay, so define words in your vocabulary list and practice using them. Okay, so dito, asan na yung define kanina? Okay, ito create a vocabulary list no, during reading. Okay, after reading naman, you must define no, all of the vocabulary words that you have listed no, in order for you to gain new knowledge then. Okay, and then practice no, using those unfamiliar words. Okay, so that you had read no, in the certain or particular text. Para sa next time na ma-encounter mo siya for a different book, okay, or for a different reading materials, okay, so hindi na siya unfamiliar words sa iyo. Okay? So padagdag na padagdag yung ating mga vocabulary words so as we read. Okay? So you must have a vocabulary list, you must have a vocabulary list or create a vocabulary list that during reading and then after reading no have a definition of it and kindly use it or practice using them. Okay? So those are the some of the reading strategies that you can use no before, during, and after reading. Okay, so for a video of it, so I would like you to watch this no first. So this is just a summarize or summarization no, of what I have of what I had discussed to all of you. No?
This is an introduction to critical reading strategies. Our essential question is, how do I approach a text so that I can read for understanding and to complete a task? There are three aspects to approaching a text. What do we do before reading, or pre-reading? What do we do during reading? And what do we do after reading? Before reading, the first thing you're going to do is read the task. What is it that you're going to have to do after you read the text? Now, this might be something as simple as just understand the text, but it can also involve some of the following. Write a summary, compare or contrast with another text, or prepare for a debate or discussion. Next, you're going to scan the text. Have a look at the title, images, any subheadings, and make a prediction. When you're making your prediction, consider both what you think the text will be about after looking at the title and the images, and also what you already know about this topic. Predictions are important because it gives our brain something to watch for as we read, and it gets us ready to understand the information that's coming our way. Next, you're going to number the paragraphs. This is an easy step, but a really important one. It helps you refer back if you're writing a paragraph or an essay, or if you're in a discussion. It also helps you find key information and help other people find what you're talking about. Next, you're going to read the first and last paragraphs. Once you've read these important paragraphs, add to or change your prediction. Most of these strategies are good for non-fiction texts, and you can use them for fiction, but I would not do this step with a story. You don't want to read the end before you've read the whole story. Now we come to what we do during reading. Once we've done some pre-reading and some thinking, we're going to read the text. For some of us, this is tough. Put your pencils down. Read it once through for a general understanding. Then you're going to read the text again. Now you pick up your pencil and you're going to mark the text. This can be done in lots of different ways. The methods that we're going to look at are the following four. One of them is to circle keywords and underline claims. Another method is called insert symbols, and it is what it sounds like. Another one that has a good name is writing in the margins. And finally, Something that most of us are familiar with is highlighting anything that stands out. Now, some of these methods don't work very well if you're working with a textbook and you're not allowed to write in it. However, you can get around this by using sticky notes and flags and tabs. Let's have a look at method number 1, circling keywords and underlining claims. Keywords are words that are repeated, related to the topic, perhaps something that you don't know, or words that seem important somehow. Obviously, you don't count repeated words like the, but other key vocabulary words that are repeated might be important to your understanding. Claims are arguable statements, statements that someone could argue one way or another, and they might be backed up by statistical evidence, anecdotes, or expert testimony. This method is really good if you're trying to understand an argument. Method number 2 is inserting symbols as you read. You can choose your own symbols that have meaning to you, or you can start off with these ones. You can use a check mark if you know this already, or if you agree with something that you've read. An addition sign is for something new to you because it adds to your knowledge. A subtraction sign is when you encounter something that's different from what you thought. You can use an exclamation for something that surprises you. And a question mark isn't so much if you're confused about something, though you can certainly use it for that, but more about something that makes you wonder about more information.
Kindly rejoin immediately once the Zoom has ended.
Or connections to something else. Method number 3 is writing in the margins. Now this one can be used in lots of different ways, and it is what it sounds like. You write all over the text, mostly in the margins where there's space. It can look a little something like this, where you draw arrows and add questions, make notes to yourself, and possibly along the side, add short summaries of what each section is about. This one is good if you have to summarize